Welcome back. In this video, we'll be discussing spousal sponsorship and the importance of drafting your personal statement. So, although a personal statement is not mandatory to include in your spousal sponsorship application, at Aquarian Associates, we definitely recommend it. It is a way for you and your spouse to disclose to the immigration officer your relationship. So, some general information you want to include in the spousal sponsorship personal statement form, or letter I should say, is how you met your partner, your methods of current communication, your methods of past communication. So basically how you met, where you met, who was there when you guys met, so possibly someone else introduced you guys, how you guys have kept in contact. What are some of the pros and cons of the relationship? There's nothing wrong with saying in a funny way where you like certain things about your partner and dislike certain things of your partner. Maybe you don't like some of the jokes that your partner says because it makes you uncomfortable. Something of this, because that proves that this is a genuine relationship. None of us will like everything about our partner, so it is okay to disclose that to the officer as it emphasizes the genuineness of your relationship. Other things you may want to include are travels that you've done together, trips you've taken together, the relationship between you and your partner's family, so how they like you as a common law partner or spouse partner or whatever your relationship is. Maybe they don't like you. You might want to emphasize that. The reason why it's important to also include those things or family members that do not have a good relationship with you is because if you don't have a good relationship with your mother-in-law or father-in-law or whoever, you most likely will not be able to get them to produce some of the documentation you need. And the officer would want an explanation for that. And that's okay. It is okay not to have a good relationship with your mother or father-in-law, for example. Not all of us get along. So if that's the case, and that's the reason why you're not able to get them to draft a reference letter about your relationship, you might want to include that in your personal statement that for this reason, I don't get along with my mother-in-law or my father-in-law and so forth. And that's okay too. Whether you visited your partner throughout the relationship. So, for example, if you're sponsoring your wife from Ukraine and you've traveled back and forth, you want to explain this in your personal statement about you traveling back and forth to visit your spouse. Also include the itinerary as supporting documentation. And if that is, sometimes it's very difficult to do that, constantly visiting your spouse. And maybe there's financial constraints on you, so you're not able to visit your spouse as often as you would like. And you want to include that in your personal statement that despite wanting to be with your spouse all the time, you're not able to because you have commitments here in Canada, such as your job, or there's financial constraints and things like this. Again, including this in your personal statement will help because you may not have those documentation that the officer will be looking for. Another example would be it costs a lot of money to call long distance. So if you're calling your wife constantly to Ukraine, it's going to cost you a lot of money to do that. So a lot of times clients use calling cards. Unfortunately, immigration doesn't accept calling cards. And so how do you prove that you constantly are talking to your wife on the phone if calling cards are not accepted? So one way is to explain your financial situation in your personal statement and say the reason why I'm using the calling cards, even though I understand that immigration doesn't accept those as evidence, is calling cards because it's much more affordable for me. So you want to explain not only how you met, where you met, how you feel about each other, what your future plans are, but also some of these difficulties that you're facing either with your family members or his or her family members, or constraints such as financial constraints and so forth. That will prove the genuineness of the relationship because no relationship is perfect and the officer wants to see where you're struggling, what you're doing, what your future plans are and so forth. Again, if The personal statement, like I stated before, is not mandatory. It's highly recommended. It is part of your way of communicating to the immigration officer. Fortunately, we don't have the immigration officer, so just dial and say, this is my situation. Everything has to be done in writing. One way to speak to the officer is through your personal statement. Until next time.